You're listening to Chillworthy,
a podcast where two best friends discuss mysteries, murders, and anything in between for your enjoyment.
So if you're ready to hear some chilling and unsettling cases, you're in the right place. Happy listening. Hello, everyone, and happy December.
Absolutely.
Talia's here, too. Welcome
With
back.
With bells on. So I wish I had our little bell dingers.
They don't sound like jingle bells.
No, they don't. They don't.
So thank you, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia, as you heard. As we said, we are in the month of December. One would argue the coziest of the burrs.
I will argue.
Okay. Well, I guess start then.
Well,
what do you have to say
Well,
about
let's hear from you as well, because I'm a little shocked. No, I'm not shocked, because you talked about it. You did feel that December, because of the holidays, was cozy rosy to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, October's my favorite.
Of course.
Absolutely. But December is because October doesn't strike me as dark yet. It's still...
well, we're sure as hell dark now.
Exactly.
Jeez Louise.
So, like, October is like you're still outside doing some activities and stuff.
In the evenings with the sun.
Right. December is like, okay, now it's like you're inside, maybe there's a nice glow from the outside of Christmas lights or something.
That's about it.
But you're tucked away for this month.
Yes.
And that is what I mean by the coziest month.
You're right. Yeah, you're right, man. Potential snow in December.
I'm right. Well, yeah, potential snow.
Right. I mean, also in November, too. But, yeah, I see what you're saying. I see where you're going. Yeah. Now, riddle me this in terms of favorite holidays. Where does Christmas... I know you love Christmas Eve. Major...
Christmas Eve and Christmas are wrapped together.
Oh, okay.
They're a duo.
Right.
So what's your question?
I was going to say, in terms of favorite holidays, where are you at? But I guess Christmas/Christmas Eve are number 2 for you.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
So today what I wanted to say, though, is not Christmas related, but...
Okay.
Or December related, but, I mean, this is insanity, what I'm about to say.
I know what you're going to say, I think.
Okay, maybe. I don't know.
I'll let you know.
Is that... It's been announced that there are just aliens in the ocean.
Not at all what I thought you were going to say.
Think so.
I'm really pissed I got that wrong.
And frankly, I don't give a damn. It's like you have these hearings, these congressional hearings where people are like, yeah, there's aliens in the ocean and we have videos and we have pictures and we have whatever. We won't show any of that, but we have it all. And it's like, well, listen, either... shaw me or get off the pot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to play in this either. But I'm just saying, it's insane that in this day and age, they're just saying freaking aliens are now, I guess they're not even aliens because they're not from outside of our world. They're not from outer space. They're from under the water. Mermaids, if you will.
Do you remember that mermaid documentary?
Yes, I do. I believed everything. I didn't know it was fake for a long time.
I think a lot of people felt that way.
Very intriguing.
Yes, and it was, I have, of course, Ariel is, a queen, but what? What?
To what?
The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, a queen of what?
The world. I don't know. An effing queen.
What do you mean?
I don't mean a Disney queen. I mean, she's
very recognizable as a mermaid?
I guess, yes, but like she's a saint.
All right. Fine.
But other than her, mermaids have never been my thing.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, like I'd prefer just straight up sea life, know what I'm saying? Right.
Yeah.
But that documentary was pretty convincing.
Hell yeah, I was like, tools?
Gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I had major suspicions, but I will say that I was definitely on the fence, not totally understanding what I was seeing and like, shit, is this real? Is this not real? There's no way this can be real. I guess this is real. No, it is not real. So there's that, but I don't know about...
two things. Let's just say two things. Number one, imagine if these said creatures were even remotely close to Ursula.
Oh, God.
I mean,
her bosom.
Right. She's curvy. She's voluptuous.
She sure is.
She
yes.
is amazing. And the idea that that maybe, you know, these would then start, these little creatures or big creatures, who knows?
Yeah, we don't know.
Right, because they won't tell us or show us, but would start coming up and just being like, when Ursula says, the only way to get what you want is to become a human yourself. And she's like, can you do that? My dear, sweet child. That's what I do. It's what I live for. To help unfortunate merfolk like yourself. Poor souls with no one else to turn to.
Did you look it up, or
No.
you're getting this off memory?
Of course I'm getting it off memory.
Fine.
But listen, this, first off, I wish you would not have interrupted my Ursula impression, because I think it was pretty good.
I'm very
but you
sorry.
can't help yourself. Second, is this actually brings us to tell the viewers about one of, if not the biggest fight Talia and I have ever had, stemmed
God.
from, not from this exact, not from that song,
I can't believe you brought this
but
up.
from a song. And when we were traveling once, I don't clearly recall.
We were having a wonderful time.
Right,
we'll
but I was
say.
going to say, I don't recall if you were throwing them back or not. 'cause
I
there was
actually
like
wasn't.
moonshine involved at some
Well,
points.
that might have
but
been the case, but I don't think I get snarky when I drink.
we,
Loosey goosey.
and Talia has mellowed over the years.
Thank you
She
for
has.
saying that.
But back then,
I wasn't.
you know, we
hippie
did have
in
it.
life.
No,
Oh my God!
I wasn't going to
God, I loved that reaction.
that, but
No, but it's the truth, man.
well, okay.
Made
but
me extra feisty.
okay. But we were talking about Part of Your World lyrics, and I told her she was wrong, and she said she wasn't, and then I tried to correct her again, and then she got pissed.
Can I also say
No. And then go ahead.
pee my
What?
pants.
What?
just that I love that, like, this, as much of a tumultuous time as it was
Most uncomfortable.
moment, not time, moment,
Right.
that it has become, like, we joke about it a lot.
Yeah.
We reference it in everyday conversation.
Sometimes,
not every
yeah.
day, but
Yeah.
weekly.
I'd love to get to it if you'd let me.
Yes.
So we did have a, you know, she's like, who the hell cares what this is? You know, and it was back and forth for a little bit. And it was nighttime, so we weren't going anywhere. You know, we were in our little Airbnb for the evening.
It was lovely.
Oh, it was a lovely place. And
Absolutely.
I was on one couch and she was on the other, and neither one of us were saying anything. And it was extremely awkward. And finally, I did say, I don't know what time it was, but it was time to, like, go to bed. And, you know, we had, like, my bedroom was on the second floor. Hers was on the first floor. So
I love when you do this impression. I love when you do this.
So I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go to bed now. And I'm, like, looking over at her. And, you know, and she just sort of, like, looks over at me. And then I'm like, I mean, because, again, it was very uncomfortable. And we hadn't spoken. And I was like, I mean, unless, like, do you want to say, like, is there anything to say? And she's, like, looking at the couch cushions. And she's like,
The couch cushions. I was.
like, no, I mean, I don't know. I just, there's nothing to say. I was like, all right, well, I just wanted to make sure because I'm going to go to bed now. And so Talia's like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess it's just, you're not nice.
Oh my God, a dog just barked at you.
And then who knows what the discussion was after
I know,
that.
but
it was
we
a
went-
very uncomfortable situation.
But we went to bed nice. Everything was fine. And
Yes, you had to break that tension. You had to. You
you're
have
very
to.
good at doing that. I could have gone on
you would've-
forever.
Still, probably, if I left it up to you.
But I think, and we reference not only that story, like those different points, we quote them, which I think is beautiful.
So, take this as a lesson, everyone out there. You don't go to bed angry.
Absolutely not.
And don't leave it up to Talia to fix it.
God, definitely don't do that. I can burn that bridge big time. When I'm done, I'm done.
When she is, she is.
One last thing I want to say about Ursula.
Mm-hmm.
This is a moment in the movie. I mean, that was my favorite Disney movie as a child. I know that's your favorite, but as a child, it was as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I quoted that movie like crazy. I distinctly remember at a holiday, my aunt was walking by and I like was playing on the floor and I like very creepily was like telling her to come closer.
Okay.
And I started reciting part of the freaking movie and it was Ursula's part, which brings me to I loved playing with my mom's lipstick.
Of course.
When I was little. I distinctly remember what it looked like. I remember the color. I remember the tube. I remember the drawer she kept it in. I freaking loved it. And I loved fiddling with the lipstick during Wizard of Oz because when it's no longer black and white and it's color, she has lipstick on.
Okay.
And I loved putting that lipstick on when I watched The Wizard of Oz. And I freaking loved that movie as a kid. And then Ursula. And she goes, well, angelfish. And she like, zoop, slurps it out and puts right.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. Oh my God. I just love that moment.
It is beautiful.
It is. It sure is.
All right. So anyway, that's what I mean. Even though we start out with aliens, it all goes back to Disney.
Oh my God.
It's always going to go back to Disney.
Absolutely. Which
aliens exist, but isn't Ursula the best Disney villain there is? Like, so whatever, and that's fine.
it is what it is.
Right. Anyway, all right. So I did the case this week, and I think it's a rather intriguing, mysterious, weird case.
Yours always are.
Yeah, I
you
know.
You pick stupendous topics. I mean,
Thank
you
you.
do. They
right.
really are pretty mystifying, I will say.
Well, thank you.
I get excited over the thought. And I'm truly not joking.
I believe you. I just like you to not say anything for a second so I could just kind of get in there just to get,
The first sentence
Yeah.
out.
Yes.
That's all.
All right. So this is the case of Gary Sudbrink.
Sudbrink.
Mm-hmm. Sudbrink.
That's what I was going to guess.
So
Can I just ask quickly? I was going to say, I get excited over over potential spellings of things. Did you like spelling bees as a
No.
child? I loved them. And I still get off, dare I say, on people
you said.
on people being like, how do you spell this? Did I spell this right? Any of those types
Yeah.
of questions. God, I love them. I am gleeful to advise on how you spell something. And may I say, I don't know how to spell everything. Maintenance still trips me up. Yeah. I know now how to spell it.
Exercise. I'm very bad at
Isn't
spelling.
that interesting,
It
though?
is.
It's interesting what is kind of a hang up of some people, not of others. I'm trying to think of another one.
Definitely, actually, is another one
I
that
will
really
agree.
trips me up.
Yes, sometimes agreed. Yes, but I freaking love spelling shit.
Back to Gary.
Fine.
All right, so Gary Sudbrink. He was a captain in the U.S. Air Force. He's originally from Long Island, New York, and he was stationed at a medical pharmacy in San Antonio, Texas, where he was responsible for overseeing pharmaceutical operations and just ensuring the well-being of service members.
All right.
So there's just like a touch of background. He was single with no children, from what I gather. So in early February of 1993,
Oh my God. Hocus Pocus reference. I got that right at least. Thora Birch. Danny.
Gary made an unplanned, and this is important, unplanned trip from San Antonio, where he was living, to his family's home in Long Island because he had a few days off.
Right.
And even though technically, I guess he was supposed to have let his supervisors know he was leaving the area in case he needed to be called in for something, he knew that the odds of that were extremely slim. And so he just kind of kept quiet. Like when he knew it was his 3 to 4 days off, he just kept quiet and was going to go on this trip. So again, like I said, the important thing to keep in mind here is that he did not inform anyone of his visit beforehand. No friends, no family, nobody.
Just going to pop into
Yes.
Long Island.
Right, to visit his family.
And nice surprise. I'm so sorry. What month?
February.
Okay. After the holidays.
Yes. So Gary's looking forward to seeing his family, catching up with some of his friends.
Of course.
He hadn't really been back since him and his family had attended a wedding a year before. So as Gary is packing, he hears something outside and he sees that there is this helicopter that is kind of like hovering a few hundred yards away from his, I guess, apartment complex. And he thought it was odd because of how kind of close it was to the ground and stuff. And so he sees it. He goes back inside, though, because he didn't have on his glasses and he wanted to have a better look. So he goes to grab his glasses, and by the time he gets back out, the helicopter is now much further off in the distance. And so he doesn't really think any more of it, and he just finishes getting ready, and then he heads out to the airport. So Gary gets to the airport, and while he's waiting for his flight to board, he gets approached by a man in a brown suit. Maybe DB.
I was just going to say 1970s,
Cooper.
they love the brown suits. Well, if he was a gentleman, a nice...
I think he was sort of a gentleman.
Well, then maybe it was him. DB.
So this man starts having a conversation with Gary and asks him where he's headed, and Gary tells him that he's headed home to visit family. And the man literally has a pen and a notebook and seems to be taking notes on his answers.
I don't like that.
Right, very strange.
Yes.
So then the man asks Gary's name. And Gary tells him his first name, but the man then is kind of like asking for his last name too.
Prodding for more details.
Right, and it's becoming obvious that he's not just making small talk. Like, it's kind of creeping Gary out at this point.
Like he's after him.
So the man claimed to be starting up some kind of small business and that he was conducting surveys of people at the airport. And so when the man again pushed for Gary's full name, he added, this is the man who added this, he said, "Don't worry, you won't get into trouble." Odd.
All right.
Right.
Thank you. I'm not doing anything wrong.
Right. So Gary decided to basically piece the hell out of there, and the plane was now boarding, so good, he was getting on the plane. So Gary gets on the plane, and unfortunately, after boarding, he was approached by another man.
A different man on the plane.
A different man in a suit who sat down next to him and asked him some more similar and like personal questions, like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Type of stuff. And Gary had basically had enough of this at this point, so he just asked the guy to leave him alone. And moments later, the guy was kind of interrupted by the stewardess, who was like, you're not sitting in the right seat.
I was going to say, like, what are the odds that he was in the exact...
Right. Well, he wasn't.
Right.
So the stewardess asks him to move, and so the guy gets up, but he decides to sit behind Gary and continues to kind of bug him for a few more minutes before eventually having to be escorted to his real seat by one of the flight crew.
Jeez. Persistent.
Right. So Gary would not see this man for the rest of the flight or be bothered by him, and when they were getting off the plane, he didn't see him then either. But throughout all of this, Gary was freaked out enough by the first man and now the second man that when he landed, he ended up calling his landlady and asked her if she could keep an eye on his place while he was gone, because he was like, I don't know, like, are these guys trying to rob me? Or like, why do
question.
why do they want to know where I'm going and how long I'll be gone for and, who I am in general and all this stuff.
Good thought.
So that was what happened on this trip in the actual trip part.
Right.
So now Gary is, flash forward, now he's at his parents' house, he's settling in, and things continue to get freakier as we go.
Oh, good.
So the first thing isn't creepy, but it is definitely a coincidence. Or is it, I guess, is the question. But he brought up to his parents that, there was this helicopter flying really close to his place, and his dad actually said that the same thing happened to them that day. Like,
weird.
Right, like there was another helicopter just kind of hovering around their area.
What the hell are the odds?
I don't know.
Right.
You're the statistics girl. You tell me. So now we're on the night of Monday, February 8th. And like I said, Gary's just kind of settling in now, and he decides that he's going to call one of his friends who lives in the area just to see how he's doing. Maybe he wants to get together with him at some point before he leaves, and this guy's name is Mike. So Gary calls Mike, and as soon as they begin talking, Gary found it a little odd because Mike didn't seem surprised that Gary was calling him, because I guess they hadn't talked in a while. And he also was not at all surprised that Gary was in the area. So this kind of like
Red flags.
Right. Gary was thinking, well, this is really like unusual. So Mike then mentions, because Gary's kind of like, yeah, like I'm here. And Mike ends up saying, well, I know you already called me.
Oh,
And so now Gary is completely caught off guard because he knows he hadn't just spoken to Mike, because Mike was like, you called me yesterday.
Nope, I didn't.
Right. And Gary's like thinking, and it said like, I definitely didn't. I would have remembered doing that. So Gary is like, I don't know what's going on here. And Mike was pretty insistent, though, that he did. And he started telling Gary that, Gary, quote unquote,
Right.
did indeed call him the previous day. And this supposed, again, quote unquote, Gary claimed that he just arrived in New York and that he was just getting over a cold.
I'm sorry. What year was this?
1993.
I will say, now that you just said the part about getting over a cold, I suppose that explains the confusion over misidentifying a voice and trying to get in front of it. But I was just thinking, if you had not called me, and no, if pretend you had called me, and then if we're in this scenario and you are telling me this happened, I'm telling you, well, you just called me last night.
Yeah.
I would like to think that I knew your voice well enough. Like, that is not Brent. Absolutely not. There's no way. But I feel like this whole new detail of, oh, I had a cold, by the way, is trying to get around like, the voice was a little different. You wouldn't necessarily recognize, like it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is what Mike's reporting. I don't know. But one of the things that was interesting was that this other Gary said that he landed in New York and he came in through LaGuardia Airport.
Yeah.
And Gary had flown in to JFK. Mm-hmm. And Gary was not getting over a cold. He felt completely fine. Like nothing
Obviously
of
not
that
true.
matter. Right. So Gary is now at a total loss. And I mean, it was possible that there had been a mix-up with another caller, like that Mike may have confused Gary with, but the details were just way too like specific to just dismiss. Like,
exactly.
Oh, it was Fred. Like. So, and Mike said that the Gary that called him sounded exactly like him. To your point. So
scary.
And this Gary knew personal details and had conveyed them to Mike in a way that was just unnervingly familiar, Mike said.
Like to really make him more convincing as Gary.
Right.
Right.
So both men were left just feeling like really uneasy, and Mike's insistence and the specificity of the other Gary's details unsettled Gary, and he just was like raising all of these questions like, well, who the hell was this? Who called you? Like, who is somebody trying to impersonate me? Like, whatever.
And why?
Yes.
Right.
So while Gary's on the phone with Mike having this discussion, they get another phone call.
Who does?
Gary's parents' house gets a phone call.
In Long Island.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I guess, and now this is where there's already a little bit of speculation because people are not quite exactly sure what's going on here. But Gary, because it was later at night at this point, so he figured it was probably something important. So he hangs up with Mike and he picks up the call. And very early on in this phone call, he decides he's going to record this
Good thinking.
phone call. So for those interested, I have these recordings.
Oh, shit.
So what I would say is it's super easy to find. You just have to look up, Gary Sudbrink phone call recordings. You can find them on YouTube and stuff. So I'm going to, again, just because I'm not sure if I'm allowed to play them through here, I'm just going to play them for Talia. But, you guys can certainly go do that as well. And we will then describe
what occurs
in a second
Yeah.
how it's going to be. So
Okay.
Stay tuned for that.
We're back.
Yes, we are. Okay, so we listened to the first phone call that Gary and his family received.
Most disturbing.
Yes, very creepy. When I was listening to it, the first night I was kind of doing this research. I mean, it was a little unnerving to listen to just because it just sounds very unnatural. So
it's no treat. He's trying to intentionally be spooky.
Well, something. But so during this recording, what basically happens is that this man calls, and Gary is under the impression that this is his brother Steven who is playing a joke on him. And he's like, yo, Steven, you jackass. Like, knock it off or whatever.
All in good fun. False.
Right. So, like, Gary originally thinks it's a prank. So then at one point, which I feel like this is, like, just funny because Gary says, is Steven out of the calling area? And his mom goes, how the hell do I know? Like, you know, just typical conversation, I guess.
Brotherly love.
So Gary's parents eventually both join the call, and his mom is like, who is this? You know, and the person isn't answering. And then Gary's father also jumps on, and he's trying to talk to this person, and again, not really answering. So what the gist of the phone call is, there is a man, we assume a man, and he is saying, is Gary Sudbrink there? That's the first thing he says, but he says it in a very weird cadence. He's like, is Gary Sudbrink there?
It's hard to hear.
Right. So after he says that, he says other things like, you're being impersonated by the other voice.
Which he says repeatedly, which is very confusing.
Yes. And he also says, how long will you be back? How long will you be back from Texas?
Terrible
for?
grammar.
Doesn't even make.
And he says that he's like, this makes no sense. What you're asking, the question makes no sense.
Right. So now here's already a very interesting thing to say about this phone call. Right. You said he's repeating himself, and it's obvious he's repeating himself, but it's almost obvious to the point where people are saying that this is like a recording that they keep playing.
Oh, shit. I could see that.
The person keeps saying it identically over and over.
And it doesn't make sense to what's being asked.
Right.
What
It's like
saying.
three sentences that they just kind of keep switching up. Almost like what a radio DJ would do, like using a soundboard.
Yes.
How people like have like soundboards for like Judge Judy. And it's like, I'm speaking. Like, and then you do another one.
Yes.
Put on your listening ears, you know, and then you just keep hitting those buttons. Except in 1993, I don't know if they really had
those capabilities.
Right, that kind of technology.
Right.
However, 1993 was also right around the time where a certain movie came out.
Hocus Pocus.
No, with a certain toy.
Toy Story.
No. That you could do this type of thing.
Oh my God! Home Alone 2.
The boy.
Oh my God! I had it.
talkie?
I should know. No.
Something I don't know,
What's
but
the
it was.
name of it? Hold on.
Okay, we found it. It was the Talk Boy,
Sorry.
not the Boy Talk.
You were close, and I'm sorry. I just missed it.
But if for those of you who've seen the movie, it's that little toy that Kevin uses when he's trying to make the reservation at the hotel.
It's like a verbal camcorder.
Yeah, it's the shape of a camcorder, and you can make your voice sound high-pitched or very low. And so people are saying that that's what it sounds like. It sounds like somebody recorded themselves on a similar device. They called Gary, and they just kept repeating the same three phrases over and over again. But of course, the thing that's unnerving about this phone call, especially after just talking to Mike, is the fact that one of these phrases is saying to Gary, you're being impersonated by the other voice. So, it's very weird.
My Tuck Boy was pink. What color was yours?
I think it was gray.
Right.
Like the original.
Right, like what he had in the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
So shortly after this call ended, around 11 p.m., the caller calls back. And once again, Gary hits record on his answering machine. So now we're going to listen to that quick.
Shit.
Okay, so we are back, and we listened to now the second time that this caller calls back. And,
Would you be freaked out by this?
Yeah. Would you?
Oh, well, you know.
Oh, what? You wouldn't even have been picking up. I know. This would have all been. There could be a person impersonating you for 20 years, and if anybody was trying to warn you about it, you'd never pick up the phone to know.
That's correct.
So, right.
That's correct. But I'm surprised you're saying you would be alarmed because
I wouldn't like a weird voice talking to me.
No, correct. But like, not much alarms you. You're pretty effing laid back, and
well,
you know
it wouldn't be for me. I don't like the idea of somebody calling my number and having a weird voice on the end and repeating it. Like, it seems very intentional.
Yes,
well, yes,
I
okay.
agree.
I feel like
I
feel like the difference is the strange man that walked into my living room a few years ago. It was obviously a mistake. There was no intentionality behind it. He looked like a deer in the headlights.
Agreed.
He said hello, I said hello,
Goodbye.
and he left.
Goodbye.
But the idea of somebody coming, like disguising their voice, almost kind of like Cindy James, basically,
Ugh.
you know?
Yes, I do.
So
I do.
I think that's, anyway, odd. But so throughout that night, Gary receives multiple strange calls from this person. And each call was kind of like more disturbing than the last because the caller kept reiterating these certain phrases over and over. And the voice was very, like, if we were going to describe it, well, it does sound just like the movie.
Like mechanical. Like,
Kevin McAllister here, the father. Very much like that. Credit card? No problem. So the voice is very slow and robotic.
oh my God.
And again, it was repeating these statements like, you're being impersonated by the other voice. And how long are you going to be back from Texas? So when it called back, though, there was a new statement that was used. And it said, and oh, I forgot to say this. And when the father had jumped on in the first phone call, he was very over exuberant. He was like, are you an intergalactical person? And I guess his father and his uncle were both very interested in UFOs.
Oh.
Now, we might find that funny then, but now they're living in the freaking oceans. So just so we all know, I mean, maybe this father was onto something.
Times have changed.
Right, they have. So the new statement that this voice said was, keep an eye on the skies.
Oh, shit.
Which, again, kind of is weird about those helicopters,
Agreed.
number one.
Agreed.
So this message kind of suggested, like, it was like this mysterious warning, but it didn't have any context as to what he meant by that. Then there was a second phrase that was followed up, and the phrase said, near Orion.
The constellation.
You got it, sister. So at least now there's like an astrological like
Reference.
component, right?
Yes.
And of course, Gary at one point is like, okay, should I go out now? Like, should I just go out there like right
God,
now?
Love him. He's a go-getter.
Yeah. So they were both very, you know, like the mother wasn't really that interested in any of this, but the dad was super interested.
Right.
So anyway, but of course, this caller is not overly engaging with Gary in terms of he's not giving him any instructions besides what one would assume has already pre-recorded.
Right.
So then the caller says to Gary another phrase, the full moon.
Ugh.
And if you combined all these things, he's basically saying, you know, keep an eye on the skies near Orion during a full moon, I guess. I don't know if it was a full moon when this call was happening, though.
We should look it up.
So,
Shall we?
you can.
All right.
I'll keep going. You let me know if February 8th, 1993 was a full moon.
Thank you.
So by now, Gary is fully unnerved, and he is continuing to record all of these calls with this answering machine. And, you know, it's just weird to him because the caller seems to cycle back to the same phrases over and over, but then he'll add in something new, which is like ominous and just doesn't make sense.
Waning gibbous.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So almost.
Which means it was getting there.
Exactly. Very close.
So now approximately like a half hour later, Gary and his parents were discussing this phone call. Because, of course, why the hell wouldn't you be?
Oh, my God, of course.
I mean, you'd be talking about it for days, probably.
Years.
And it rings again.
Yeah.
And
Ugh.
this time, the caller, like they picked up, but the caller seemed to take a while before even speaking at all. And it was like really, really quiet. So you just had to like listen extremely closely. So when the call happens again, Gary's father is trying to listen in because Gary is like, he keeps saying this is Steven over and over. And Gary's father, who wants to be a believer,
Right.
you know, is very much like, it's not him. I'm telling you, it's not him. And then
God
he says,
love him.
it's not him, Brian. And Gary is like, Brian. And so the father had messed up, had replaced Gary's name with Brian's name, which was another brother of his. So just in case anybody is going to listen, it's just like Brian means nothing besides it's Gary's brother, and his father just slipped up on the name. So during this call, it's the same phrases, but it's like said differently this time, which is, again, weird.
I agree.
So, no, I'm saying this this
Oh,
other
the next
call.
one?
Yeah.
I was going to say, okay.
So again, it's just more different variations on, is Gary Sudbrink there? Here is Gary
disturbing.
Sudbrink. Is this Gary Sudbrink? Things like that.
BS back and forth.
And then the same kind of things. Are you back from Texas? Keep an eye on the skies. Orion, the full moon. Now this one is interesting. Show double from you.
Show double from you.
Which makes me feel like this impersonator person, whoever that is.
There's an impersonator reference.
Right, because
Yeah.
it's like you're being impersonated by the other voice. Show double from you. I don't know.
Show me.
So, as you heard, Gary's father is super intrigued throughout this call, and he is absolutely convinced they're communicating with an extraterrestrial being. And like I said, I mean, his dad and his uncle are very much into extraterrestrials. They believe that they had an encounter or a sighting before at one point. So he's just, I would say he's a little bit biased to this concept that, you know, he really wants that to be the thing that is going on. I guess when he was in West Virginia with his uncle, there was like a weird event that happened to them in Point Pleasant in the mid 60s. And so he's like never forgotten it. So this is now the third call that was received around 11:40 p.m. And that's going to be like the last call of the night.
11:40. I mean, that's a spooky time. That's not relaxing
No.
by any means.
So now we are at the following night, which is February 9th. And that brings another call from the same unknown voice.
Ugh.
And now it gets a little stranger still.
Yeah.
So Gary's still at his parents' house, and it's the next night, and, you know, they're sitting around the dinner table, and they're trying to have a regular conversation, and of course it's not going to be regular because they cannot get past these weird phone calls that they just experienced.
Of course.
So that evening, Gary's uncle, whose name is Tom, comes for a visit, and he's there, and the phone happens to ring just before 10:30 p.m.
Freaking late.
So this phone call that they receive is the longest phone call of the bunch, and it features some of the strangest comments and questions from this mysterious voice.
No, thank you.
So first, the caller begins by saying the similar statements as before. Is Gary Sudbrink there? Gary Sudbrink? But then the caller starts veering into some new territory.
That's correct.
So, and it sort of sounds a little bit, again, extraterrestrial in nature. So the caller says, we come to be within this planet.
Shit.
In this planet. We come to be within this planet. To visit the many, to be contacted as the same with you.
I mean, I will say the way this is worded, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but the way it's worded sounds like I would imagine an alien to speak. Like,
I mean, potentially.
you know, like a little off, not quite right, also makes sense. Enough. Makes
I
enough
don't know.
sense.
I picture like, but that's just me.
Now, real quick, you did like E.T. or you did not? I know apples
I think
and
I've
oranges.
only ever seen it like once.
Get the hell out of here.
I'm serious, and he creeped me out.
I was fixated on that movie as a child, and I loved it. Loved every minute of it, except when he turned white. I started to get a little scared, but I loved him. I loved him.
Yeah, it wasn't for me, but
Yeah. I loved the family. There was drama within the family. They seemed to be fatherless and just mom and her kids doing their best. And I loved that. And I don't know. I associated with it. I loved it. I loved the mom.
you liked it, is what I'm gathering from all this.
I did. I loved it.
So, so then the uncle pops on the line
Yeah.
at some point, and this now this person is saying things like, "Beware government interference."
May I say, I love how many people became involved in this. People were not shying away, hiding
No,
in their
certainly
houses.
not.
Right. I love that. This is weird. Like, no one is shying away from talking to a supposed extraterrestrial. Like, they're very brazen.
Well, or just a weird ass voice.
Braze. I said braze. Yes, exactly. Correct.
Then towards the end of the call, the voice kind of gets more like staticky and distorted. And as it's kind of fading away, it just kind of says the same thing, which it says, "The sun will rise on the dark side of the moon. World, no. On the moon, show double from you. Beware government interference, visitations to be disrupted by them."
I mean, I don't.
All right, so if we think back to that original phone call that Gary had with Mike, and how Mike was like, "Yeah, I was talking with you, and, it sounded just like you, and you were telling me you came in from this airport and that you were getting over a cold." So that in itself obviously is weird enough, but there's actually another occurrence that sort of connects that to an earlier time. If you recall, I told you that one of the last times Gary was visiting home was for a wedding, and that happened about a year before this.
Right.
So on this visit, Stephen, who is the brother that Gary thinks is playing this joke on him, had a very odd encounter during this visit. So while driving on the highway, Stephen is driving on the highway, he spotted somebody who looked like Gary driving a similar car to Gary's and was basically following Stephen on the highway. And this car and person pulls up next to Stephen and is looking out the window at Stephen as he is driving parallel to him.
I don't like any of this.
And Stephen said it looked just like Gary, and that Gary was just kind of staring at him and making like strange faces as he was parallel to him on the highway.
Like nasty?
Stephen did not say it was nasty. He just said it was different. Like, he made different faces.
It was not him.
No. So this happens. Then I guess Gary in this car drives away. So later, though, because Stephen is headed to the same wedding Gary is headed to, but they hadn't seen each other yet. So later, Stephen learns that Gary, although he was attending that same wedding, he had flown in from Texas, and he did not have his car, and he did not, in fact, drive to the wedding on his own. So that's another very unsettling, strange-ass experience, that somebody who looks like Gary is staring at you on a highway, following your car, and then, like, looking at you strangely and then passing you. Like, that's creepy.
It doesn't seem realistic at all. But
well, I agree with that, but
it's to be.
So if we pair up the fact that Stephen saw a Gary that wasn't Gary, and Mike talked to a Gary that wasn't Gary,
right?
And then this odd voice is saying, "Show double of you,"
Show me,
and you're being impersonated by the other voice. That's a lot of really weird shit, all pointing to the fact that somebody out there is pretending to be Gary. Somebody, something,
and
somebody's.
For what? Somebody. For what? Like,
I do not know.
Right.
And then this brings us back to the start of the story, where that man approached Gary at the airport, and then another man on the plane talking to Gary, asking like these strange personal questions, and people are speculating, like, were those, whether, look, I don't know what it's like, whether they're aliens or government officials or men in black or whatever, but that these people were trying to get this information from him because somebody out there is trying to impersonate him for whatever reason, and they were trying to gather this information.
Right.
And so, like, they were getting this, that somebody could do their best to mimic Gary's movements and basically, like, try to be him. So, from what I have heard, Gary is still alive and well.
Oh, shit.
And
but good.
Right, and he, because people are saying, well, all of this is a prank by the family, and they were just trying to get notoriety and stuff.
please.
But Gary has never really, he hasn't like made money off of this or anything. And
Right. Like, to what benefit?
right, there was a person who's into UFOs who Gary told the story to, who did start presenting it at like UFO conventions, I guess.
In
like
the family.
no, like another person who was into it, and he kind of shared with her this story. So I think the criticism that people have, though, is back in 1993, how did he record these calls so quickly? Like, no answering machines had that availability that I remember.
What do you mean?
In terms of somebody calls and you're talking to them and you're also going over to the answering machine and hitting record. Like, I don't remember that ever happening.
I don't remember ever doing it. I don't know about the capability of it at that time.
The point is, Gary is still doing his thing, and, you know, I mean, nothing else that we are aware of has happened besides those strange phone calls. But I would definitely encourage the chillers to go, like I said, on YouTube or just Google it and look up the Gary Sudbrink recordings, because you can, you know, they're pretty lengthy, and you can listen to just all of the strange, not only the strange voice, but then like the family's reactions, which seem to be genuine, like from the mother's annoyance to the dad's like super excitability.
I agree.
You know, it just seems rather weird. And just this little ending note here, his home was never nothing was ever tampered with. Like when I told you he called his landlady to say like, keep an eye on my house, like nothing ever happened when he was gone that he was aware of. You know, nobody tried to like get into his house or anything like that when he got back. And so, you know, sadly, I don't have any kind of way to wrap this up besides it was just a very unusual event. I think there are some other people who have reported similar phone calls, but I don't have any of their information at the moment. That is, like I said, that's pretty much the end of the case. I mean, it's not wrapped up in a pretty bow by any means, but just a weird occurrence. So what are your takeaways from that?
I'm bothered. I'm a little scared for the family. I will say, listening to the like tapes or whatever you call them.
Recordings, yes.
Thank you. I would have been completely out of my mind, terrified. And they were very bold and like totally confronting whatever it was.
Yeah, I agree. I think they were brave. And
yes.
I would not have liked those calls.
Oh my God.
As we said. So
no. So I think that's lovely. And I don't know what to make of this.
I don't either, and especially because then it just apparently stopped. So, but now with the discovery of aliens, who knows if more of these things are going to happen.
Right.
So, that wraps up this episode of Chillworthy with Brent and Talia. And as always,
stay safe
and stay chill.
Bye, chillers.
Bye, chillers.
You.
Have a good one. You've just listened to Chillworthy. Thank you for joining us on this latest episode. While we strive to keep our discussions engaging and lighthearted, we also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the real lives and events that are at the heart of these stories.
We try to approach each topic with a sense of curiosity and respect, fully aware of the impact these events have had on the individuals and their loved ones. Our goal is to honor their memories by keeping their stories alive and shedding light on the mysteries that surround them.
If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, and don't forget to join us on the next episode of Chillworthy.